A character with a legacy like Sonic's is going to be built by more than just his introduction. While the launch of his first outing did help set him on the path of success, it was going to take work, dedication, and money to keep him running down that path, and well, run he did. The first game in the Sonic series left an impression, and the legacy it helped create can be seen clearly today, as Sonic the Hedgehog is still one of the most recognizable mascots in the game industry, but it wasn't enough just to make a good entrance. From here, the series would have to prove it had staying power, and while Sega was initially hesitant to allow work on a sequel too early, the financial success of the first game helped convince them to greenlight the production of a follow-up. I tried to hold up Sonic 1, mainly because I want to give credit where it's due, and I really do think that game was Sega starting off on the right foot with their new IP. But you could easily make the argument that this first sequel in the series held more weight in how the franchise would perform moving forward than its predecessor. This was going to establish if customers were looking at a serious contender in the market and a strong rival to Mario, or a one-hit wonder. Not only would Sonic 2 have to hit the shelves with quality, it had to keep pushing the boundaries. It had to be better, and if the reputation this game has enjoyed over the decades is any indication, it accomplished everything it set out to do. Now, it's easy to say that, of course, but developing this game was anything but smooth. Sonic 2 had a really complicated and rushed development cycle, but we actually aren't going to be getting into that here today. That territory has already been covered before, and I would recommend checking out videos from other talented creators about what it took to get this game made, but today, I wanted to focus on sharing my own personal history with today's subject matter when getting this review ready, because it really did not go exactly how I expected. So, if you'll lend me your ear, let me tell you about my journey with a classic. This is Sonic the Hedgehog 2. I was not a Genesis kid, so I didn't start out playing the classic era of Sonic games on original hardware. My introduction was this Sonic Mega Collection Plus for the PS2. I had maybe messed around with these games through other means before, but this was the first time I got to own them and really sink my teeth into the origins of this franchise. It wasn't even just the original trilogy of titles though. This compilation also hosted games like Sonic Spinball, Mean Bean Machine, 3D Blast, and even Game Gear titles. This PS2 disc was special to me because it was one of the first times I ever got to just experience the history of a franchise like this, even getting acquainted with the covers of the original Archie comics run for the character. Sadly, Sonic CD didn't get to join in the fun this go around, but it would get included in other collections and standalone releases. The titles I spent the most time with as a kid though were in the main lineup of games. Least of all, the original game. I mentioned that in the last video. I don't think I even bothered to finish the original game until recent years, but I did beat Sonic 2. This one was easier to get into, held my attention, and kept me coming back over the years. It was never my favorite out of this lineup of games, we'll get to that one, but I remember this one fondly, and when I booted this game up again after reviewing the first, I was really curious to see what I would think after playing it with a more critical eye. It took several playthroughs. I can't even tell you how many times I played through this game just over the past couple of weeks, and it felt like my impressions changed each and every time. While I did end up really liking this game, my experience with it was not smooth. Let's take it from the top. Last time, we saw the ill-fated exploits of Dr. Eggman Robotnik as he tried to gather the Chaos Emeralds and conquer the world, and it didn't go well, which is why he's trying it again. This time, he formulated a new plan after a late night watching Spike TV and Star Wars came on. Because the doc is full of nothing but original ideas, he decided he wanted a Death Star of his own and sets out to conquer the world one more time with his giant battle station known as the Death Egg, and is trying to power it up with, once again, the Chaos Emeralds. It's also established here that there are 7 Chaos Emeralds, not 6, so whatever you saw in the first game, it wasn't the full set. And 7 Chaos Emeralds has been the canon number of these things ever since. Sonic sets off to get the old egghead to stay in his lane, but this time he's joined by a friend, a peppy little two-tailed fox named Miles Prower, better known to basically everyone at this point as Tails. You can actually play through this game a couple of different ways, either with Sonic on his own, Tails taking the journey on himself, or my preferred and the default method, playing as Sonic with Tails tethered to him the whole way through. Tails doesn't really play any different from the blue blur. When he's tagging along while you're playing as Sonic, you can see him spinning his tails around like a propeller to fly, which is absurd and adorable, but sadly you don't get to control this ability while playing as little miles per minute yourself. It's still worth it to give this a solid playthrough as the guy though, just cause, I mean, just look at him. Tails is one of my favorite characters in this series. He has been ever since I played him in Sonic Adventure as a kid, but that's a discussion for another day. But something I've always liked about their dynamic is that Tails is just this kid that's following Sonic's influence. Eggman is running around causing mayhem, subjecting animals to his experiments, and turning them into robotic slaves. I mean, who even knows what happened to all the humans in this world? I mean, I do have my theories, but here's Tails coming along, seeing everything Sonic did in the first game to stand up to the guy, and he just wants to join the cause. I can get deeper into Tails as a character as we look at future games, just know that he is a very good boy and I love him. Their adventure starts off in territory that might seem pretty familiar. It's been said a million times, but Green Hill Zone and Emerald Hill Zone certainly have their similarities. Greens, blues, browns, palm trees, loops to run through and such, but there's still enough going on here to get you acquainted with what's new. The base gameplay is the same as before, with Sonic moving, jumping, and collecting rings as he did in the first game, but you're gonna see more sloped nature to the level's terrain. It really wants you to get used to running fast and relying on your reflexes to avoid obstacles that would otherwise halt your momentum. I think my favorite new addition here though is the corkscrew. It's really neat seeing such a simple but memorable twist on the loops from the original game, and they always feel great to run through. You're also introduced to a new mechanic here called the spin dash. By holding down and then pressing one of the jump buttons, Sonic or Tails will start rolling up and building up speed, so when you release the D-pad, they'll go flying forward. If you want to hear the most satisfying sound in the world, keep mashing the jump button while getting that spin dash ready and you'll be revving up like crazy. It's a useful ability for when you want to skip building up speed and just get a move on, and it's something the character has held onto ever since for good reason. The following zones help carry over these qualities too, as this game does a much better job than its predecessor as keeping momentum and physics-based platforming at the gameplay's core. I'm still glad I got a better handle on how these games rely on speed and physics for the first game, as it helped me better appreciate the level design here in a way I didn't as a kid. Chemical Plant Zone is a good example. I hated this place when I was younger, but now that I have a better understanding of momentum manipulation, the rewards of good reaction time, and careful gameplay, this is one of the highlights of the game for me. Now, I like Marble Zone from Sonic 1 for my own reasons, but this right here is how you do a second level in a game. And maybe the frustrating time I had with it as a kid was part of the point. Like I've said before, 2D Sonic games are generally encouraging you to take the high road and stay near the top of the stage. Levels like Chemical Plant and its follow-up Aquatic Ruin basically punish you with a slower pacing if you stray too far from the higher levels of the stage, and it's a great silent communicator about how taking advantage of the game's design is important. Now, Aquatic Ruin Act 2 gets a little too insistent on this point, because anything but the top part of this act sucks. I don't mean that it's just kind of slow or platform heavy. Now, it's honestly just a slog to play through, and it's really easy to end up down here if it's your first time or you make a very simple mistake at the beginning of the level. Well, the music sure is nice though, so there's that. Oh, right, the music. I can't believe I didn't talk about this in the last video. If there's one thing you can count on with this series, almost regardless of the game's quality, it's a good soundtrack. I've got a soft spot for the OST of Sonic 1, but let's be real, Sonic 2 overshadows it pretty heavily. There are some of the most memorable tracks in the game industry, setting the tone of each location you blast through and sticking in your brain for decades to come. Some of this stuff is still getting covers and remixes to this day, and it's not hard to understand why. It's great all around. It also helps that you'll be hearing new tracks at a brisker pace this go around, as each zone contains only 2 acts instead of 3, which helps the pacing quite a bit. At the end of the second act, you'll face off against Eggman with some form of contraption, and I love that these aren't just machines he shows up in. They're designed to contain his Eggmobiles so you can see them attach and detach during fights. Robotnik is so insistent that the world around him conforms to his will that even his own creations are designed to accompany his comfy flying lazy boy. Also, noticing Casino Night Zone, he really flaunts his style with this machine. Look at all those lights. I mean, this man is a theatrical fellow. It's not enough for him to come out on top. He's gotta look good doing it, right? Well, speaking of Casino Night Zone, this is actually where a lot of my issues with the game started to settle in for me. They're all personal problems for sure, but still things worth bringing up. You know, if I can defend the first game in any way when comparing it to its sequel, it's that there wasn't an entire aspect of Sonic 1 and a whole reward connected to it that I had to actively avoid just for the sake of enjoying that game, and I cannot say the same for Sonic 2 when it comes to collecting the Chaos Emeralds. Special stages are back, but now they work a little differently than before. You still need to collect 50 rings to access them, but instead of needing to complete the levels with 50 rings, you have to pass through these checkpoints with them. Now, on the one hand, that could help in that now you have more opportunities to enter the special stages, but in reality, I think it kills this game's pacing if you're really trying to get those emeralds. You're constantly watching your step, trying not to move too quickly lest you run into some enemy or obstacle that makes you lose all your rings, and trying not to interact with a goalpost until you've got them in hand. Activated too early, and now there's no way to use it to enter the stage, so it turns every level you're playing while trying to get the Chaos Emeralds into this frustrating game of stop and go unless you already really know what you're doing, but if you already really know what you're doing, you're not going to be bothering with this little side objective at all. Let me tell you why! The half-pipe. Iconic imagery, really impressive for its time, whatever. These are the special stages. You and Tails run through this half-pipe collecting rings. After a certain checkpoint, you need to have enough rings on hand to keep going, and if you don't, the stage is over. You can also lose rings by running face first into these little spike ball traps littered all over the stage, which really love to hide around corners, and because these sections run at about the frame rate of a PowerPoint presentation, that means trial and error. Tails can help you collect rings, which is why it's handy to play this game with both characters together, but his nickname quickly turns into Miles Liability Prower as soon as it comes to these spike balls because he'll lose rings every time he hits one too, but that's not all. You're basically playing these stages at both a normal response time and with Tails involved, also the equivalent of input lag, and you have to account for both, and some of these special stages are really stingy with their ring requirements. These stages are built entirely on memorization, not skills, not reflexes. The surprise attacks from spikes don't allow for that. It's all about going through these things as many times as it takes to get them perfected, and when accessing them hinders the overall quick nature of the normal zones, that means a good number of playthroughs of Sonic 2 that are just plain not fun for the sake of getting all 7 Chaos Emeralds from these stages. And maybe that wouldn't be so bad if it weren't for the fact that your reward for going out of your way for all these things sucks in this game too! Super Sonic. It's Super Saiyan Goku, but it's a hedgehog now. Using the power of the 7 Chaos Emeralds, he can activate this state of invincibility where he's fast, flies all over the place, and can take out everything by touching it, which is cool, right? Well, in concept, yes, but he becomes a real nuisance in later levels, which is where you're most likely to get access to this form anyway. Collects 50 rings and the jump button will activate Super Sonic, where I swear that yellow texture isn't to show that he's coated in gold or something. I'm pretty sure he's made of butter now because he turns into the most slippery pain in the butt where the game demands the most precise platforming, and I know this must have been really cool to all of you who grew up playing this game on the Genesis and had all the time in the world to play through this game and needed a reason to keep hacking away at it instead of taking it back to Hollywood Video after a week, but I'm not playing this game in the 90s and that doesn't cut it anymore. Gilly's never gonna talk to me again. At this point, just use cheat codes to mess around with Super Sonic until you get tired of him and then never bother with this again. Trying to play through this game with the goal of getting Super Sonic using this very obvious mechanic really soured my experience with Sonic 2. Shame on me for chasing this obvious gold carrot they felt the need to dangle in front of me, and I was only half joking. I know in context, for its time, this was a lot more justifiable, and I imagine this was a legendary accomplishment back then. But nowadays, I honestly believe it worsens every aspect of the game it touches unless you ignore it completely, so I definitely can't say this part of the game aged well. Thankfully, after I got done with that part of the recording process, I tried playing through this game in a more standard way, and I enjoyed everything so much more. Casino Night Zone wasn't as tedious to me, and I could enjoy it for the fun novelty area that it is. Hilltop Zone was more fun to experiment with as I continued to find secrets and new ways to travel through it faster. Mystic Cave Zone has some of the best exploration and power-up placement in the game. It almost felt like playing an all-new title once I shifted my internal priorities for completing it. I started loving these levels for their own merits. I was able to see why everyone praises these zones over the ones in the first game, as these ones are much more consistently built around the hedgehog. It's great. I was having a blast now. This game is a huge improvement on what came before, between more engaging boss encounters with Eggman, even better presentation like expressions from Sonic, and levels that still demand skill and thought from the player, but are tooled to let you take advantage of the given terrain and keep moving. Which is why I'm not crazy about Oil Ocean Zone, which I think is kind of slow and uninteresting. I'm always forgetting this zone even exists until I come across it, and the enemy placement, man, it gets kind of annoying here sometimes, but not as bad as Metropolis Zone. I hate this place. I despise playing through it. It feels like a maze. I feel like I'm wandering around rather than actually making progress until I just kind of come across the exit. These starfish enemies are evil design incarnate. These crabs don't make any sense with how you're supposed to avoid taking damage from them, and the less I say about slicers, the better, and these bolts you have to run on to move are as bad as any speed trap from Sonic 1. And just like Sonic 1, this is the only zone in the game with 3 acts instead of 2, and they all feel like they last longer than they ought to. I will take all of Scrap Brain Zone from Sonic 1, all of it, before wanting to slog through even a single act of Metropolis Zone. Fight me. The Sky Chase and Wing Fortress following it are fine. It's a nice relaxer as Tails and Sonic use their plane known as the Tornado to chase down Eggman's ship and then running through it to reach Eggman's rocket and follow him to the Death Egg. It's slow, and it's one of the only places in the game where I think the music is a little unfitting. Like, I would expect the first part of what's effectively the finale of this game to be a little more bombastic or build up a bit more excitement. I don't know, it might just be a little too mellow for me, but the series will have another Sky Chase later that I think kind of nails the idea of what I was looking for here, but there is a moment later in this game that I think justifies the tone here. Finally, after all that, Sonic is left to encounter Robotnik on the Death Egg. Tails has fallen behind after the tornado took damage, he has 0 rings for protection, and is greeted with Mecha Sonic, a shambled together replica of himself that's admittedly really easy to take out once you get the hang of him, but that is a good thing given the small safety net you have here and considering this is a mere prelude to the real final fight. As Sonic chases Eggman down this corridor, the scientist jumps into the Death Egg robot to try to squash his troublesome rival, and man, is this thing intimidating. This has got to be one of my favorite pieces of music attributed to a final boss fight in a Sonic game. It has an unmatched tone of menace and doom, and he could be a challenging guy to take out too, as it takes some work to figure out the hitboxes on his arms. But after a bit of effort, you put together that you basically have to taunt him into shooting his arms out at a certain angle. It's like you're using Sonic's attitude to goad the Doctor into leaving himself vulnerable to attack, which is kind of brilliant, though I doubt that this was actually designed with that intention. Get enough good hits in and the robot is destroyed, leaving the Death Egg to start erupting, and Sonic quickly dashes to escape the explosion. From the surface, we see the giant fortress go up in smoke in the atmosphere, with Tails gazing up at the scene after fixing up the tornado. In a last act of heroism, he takes to the sky with his plane and catches Sonic, saving him from his fall. The music playing here is like a rock opera. It's the best way I can describe it. There's something about this tone that just feels so heartwarming, and I think it fits with the themes for Sky Chase and Wing Fortress, making me like those tracks more in retrospect. What a simple but elegant tale, these two friends having each other's backs as they set out to save the world from a tyrant. This does sadly lose a bit of its charm if you collected the Chaos Emeralds, as Super Sonic basically saves himself and Tails is just kind of there. Yeah, screw Super Sonic in this game, it's not worth the effort. I do apologize if I came off as a bit scrambled during this review. I had a really hard time getting this script put together, and I think my mixed experience while playing was part of the reason. But once you sit down and play this game in its base form, what you've got is gold. Just like last time, you're not gonna have a hard time tracking this one down. It's made available on just about every modern console out there, and once again, the Christian Whitehead port on mobile devices is very solid. It's a great way to play this game. But you know, whenever I hear fans talk about Sonic 1 these days, it's about nothing besides Green Hill Zone and then all of the game's flaws, and can I just say, I'm really glad the developers didn't have such a basic outlook on Sonic's first outing. They didn't obsess over what didn't work like so many people do now. They worked around those flaws, but built up everything good about Sonic to make something better, and that was still holding onto the character's unique identity. That's why I value criticism over cynicism. It's why even after all my complaining about a couple of the game's aspects in this video, the stuff that matters to me the most are the highlights, the bursts of joy I get from running through these areas. It's the camaraderie between these two best friends. It's a game that has not only garnered an incredible reputation over the years, but one that earned it. At the end of the day, as predictable as it sounds, I of course have to recommend Sonic the Hedgehog 2. And that was that. The series was just set in stone now. I mean, you can look at the history for yourself. But while Sonic 2 set out to evolve the gameplay of the original game in one way, there was another game that's set to do the same but in a different direction. A story we'll have to tackle next time as we look at Sonic CD. But until then, remember that my top tier patrons get to see these videos 2 days early. You can find me on Twitter, Twitch, Discord, Sunset City, whichever you prefer, links in the description, and of course, as always, spread the word, tell your friends, and until we see each other again, thank you so much for watching. See you next mission. Hey there everyone, thank you as always for watching this video. I was never expecting this to be one of the more difficult scripts that I needed to put together, but I had to push through it. I just needed to because of people like you, my viewers, the people that help support me and make this stuff possible, including, of course, my Patreon supporters. I have to thank each and every one of you, the whole lot, but I do need to give some very special shout outs to this month's top tier patrons. This month they are Brendan Hess, Christine Larkin, Earl Valco, Jeremiah Harrison, Lederick, McKenzel, Mr. SP, Wonton Photo, Nicholas Morgan, Patricia Marcoux, and Surus the Skeptic. Thank you guys so much. You do make this possible, you do make it worth it, and I am so happy to have people like you backing me up and just making it possible for me to work on stuff like this. I came into enjoying this so much more because we have built up a community here of people that love what I do and people that I love for just being there with me while I put all of this together and treat a hobby like a business. Thank you guys so much, and I cannot wait to bring you guys more. I do not think the Sonic CD video is going to be as hard to put together, but that means I should probably go ahead and start getting to work on that. With all of that said, thanks again so much for watching, and I'll see you next mission.